Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Acacia Church. So glad that you all are joining us online. A little bit of a different strategy here this morning. We are in person. We're doing our At the Movie series, and because of the copyright infringement laws and whatnot that we have to abide by, we have something very special in store for you guys that are online. What we're doing is we're going back into the archives and we're picking just some great worship and a very applicable sermon, just a good word for you this morning. And so you may have seen it before, or this may be the first time that you've seen it, but either way, man, we're glad that you're with us, and we want you to just lean in and enjoy this replay of a previous sermon and worship set. God bless you. I'm so glad that you're with us this morning.
Good morning, Acacia at home. We are so excited you guys are joining in with us. Just sing with us wherever you are, whether you're in your kitchen or in your bed.
Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, always free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, always free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Say it out. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, always free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Sing it out. My Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
Do you believe that this morning? That we are his children and we are called. He has chosen us. He will not leave us nor forsake us. So believe that and declare it this morning. Sing it over your family. Sing it over your house and your friends. Come on, sing it with us.
I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. Let's declare it this morning. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who
Yes, Lord, we're so thankful, Lord, that you have adopted us into your family, Lord. We are your children. You are our Father, and we love you so much. We thank you, Lord, that you're the same yesterday, today, and forever. You're the God who was and is to come, the God of miracles. And you're working in our homes today. You're working in our country, in our lives today. The one who made the blind to see is moving here in front of me, moving here in front of me. The one who made the deaf to hear is silencing my every fear, silencing my every fear. 'Cause I believe in you, I believe in you. You're the God of miracles. Come on, simple, declare it. I believe in you, I believe in you. You're the God of miracles. Yes, you are. You're here and you're moving in this place. The one who does impossible is reaching out to make me whole, reaching out to make me whole. The one who put death in his place. His life is flowing through my veins. His life is flowing through my veins. 'Cause I believe in you. 'Cause I believe in you. You're the God of miracles. Oh, again we sing. 'Cause I believe in you. 'Cause I believe in you. You're the God of miracles. Oh, sing it out. 'Cause I believe in you. I believe in you. Yes, you're the God of miracles. Oh, you are. 'Cause I believe in you. I believe in you. You're the God of miracles. Right now, God is wanting to do something in your life. So if you believe it right now, if you believe in his power, right now, as an act of surrender, act of faith, I want you to just lift up your hands. If you need a miracle in your life, just lift up your hands. Open your heart and receive his power today, because his power lives in us. Lives in you. Come on. We're going to declare this out. The God who was and is to come. The power of the risen one. The God who brings the dead to life. You're the God of miracles. The God of miracles. We're going to sing it again. The God who was and is to come. The power of the risen one lives in us. The God who brings the dead to life. You're the God of miracles. Yeah. The God Yes, we believe in you. Oh, we believe in you. Yes, you're the God of miracles. Come on, sing I believe, declare it. And I believe in you. Come on. I believe in you. You're the God. You're the God of miracles. Someone like you. Oh, I believe. I believe in you. I believe in you. God of miracles. The God who was and is to come. The God who was and is to come. Oh, the power of the risen one lives in you. The God who brings the dead to life. Yes, he's the God of miracles. The God of miracles. Sing it again. The God who was and is to come. Oh, the power of the risen one, Jesus. The God who brings the dead to life. Yes, you're the God of miracles. The God of miracles. I believe in you. I believe in you. You're the God of miracles. I believe in you. I believe in you. You're the God of miracles. Come on, just worship this morning. Oh, we believe in you. Yes, we believe in you. You're the God of miracles. Oh, we believe in you. I believe in you. You're the God of miracles. And I believe in you. I believe in you. Yes, you're the God of miracles. Come on, let's just declare it. I believe. Yes, I believe in you, Jesus. I believe in you. Yes, you're the God of miracles. There's none like you, Father. There's none like you, our King. You're with us always. You never leave us. You never forsake us. You're so kind. Yes.
There's a grace when the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. And when I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fight, standing next to me. There was another in the waters, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding of how I've been set free, there is a cross that bears the burden, where another died for me. There is another in the fight. Come on, do you believe it today? All my dead left for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. Should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning? Either way, I won't bow to the things There's no other name. There is no other name but the name that is Jesus. He who was and still is and will be through it all. So come with me in the space between all the things unseen and the reckoning. 'Cause I know I will never be alone. Oh, joy come every battle, 'cause I know that's where you'll be. You'll always be there, Jesus.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to AcaciaChurch. My name is Jasmine, and I'd like to take the next couple minutes to tell you about some exciting things happening around Acacia. So check this out. If this is your first time here at Acacia, we just want to say, welcome home. We want to connect with you. The easiest way to do that is to grab the Connect card in the seat back pocket in front of you and bring it to the VIP table out in the lobby after today's gathering. If you're ready to get plugged in, you can text the word WELCOME to 225-396-4407 to begin your next step here at Acacia. Whether you are a first-time guest or call Acacia home, we want to keep you in the loop. We have so many things going on, and we want you to be the first to know. Text the word LOOP to 225-396-4407 to update your information and learn more about everything that is happening around Acacia. Starting Point is the best way for you to get to know the mission, vision, and culture of Acacia. It also helps you to discover how your personal and spiritual gifts can help make a difference. If you have the desire to get plugged in and get started, just go to AcaciaChurch.com and click the Starting Point tab. We are so excited that you are considering taking this next step forward in your journey of faith here at Acacia. Thank you so much for being here today. We believe that God has you here for a reason. There is something He wants to speak specifically to you.
Good morning, everybody. Man, it's just such an honor to have you with us this morning as we are continuing into this series that we have been in now for a few weeks, and it's simply called Homecoming. And we've been learning about this old story that's found in God's Word, but we're also learning how this ancient story is incredibly significant to us today and how it parallels with where we are today with what all we're facing. And so if you haven't been with us over the last few weeks, I would totally encourage you to go back onto our website or our app, AcaciaChurch app, and you can follow along with us, catch up, and you can just kind of get the context of where we've been kind of going and how we've been traveling with the children of Israel through their journey. So what I've done is I've kind of written this thesis statement, so to speak, and you'll see it on the screen, or if you're following along in your notes, you can follow along there. But this is not a scripture. This is like my best attempt to kind of show you the context of the story that we're learning from. So the nation of Israel left Egypt en route to Canaan. So it's this place called Canaan, and it was their promised land. So a while back, God had spoken to this guy named Abraham, and he'd said, I'm going to promise you that I'm going to start a nation through you, and we're going to begin this whole incredible movement through you, and I'm promising you this land called Canaan. And once Israel arrived into their promise, God blessed them so that they could in turn be a blessing. So Israel is traveling from their past into their destiny, and that applies to our lives as well. But Israel is traveling from slavery and captivity into their destiny, and they just knew that if they could just get to a safer realm of reality, you know what it would be like? It would be like a homecoming. And so that's where we get our title from in reference to our series. And so we've kind of tied an anchor, is the way that I like to say it, to this one scripture. It's found in the Old Testament. It's Numbers 14:8. And it goes like this: if the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And we believe that God will give that land to us. And as I've said over the last few weeks, if you're looking at a nice piece of real estate, you may not say, man, it's flowing with milk and honey. That's not the verbiage that we use, but it's metaphorical language that God was saying, this is a good land for you. This is a rich land, not in wealth, but this is a healthy land that I'm leading you to. And so over the last few weeks, we've learned some things. You can see them on the screen. We've talked about God's plan. We've talked about God's provision. We've talked about God's presence. We've talked about God's power. And then today we're going to be talking about God's nature. And I know, nature doesn't begin with the letter P. We tried to come up with something that would fit there, but we just had to buck the system eventually because there's only so many words that begin with the letter P. But the point of God's nature is this. You'll see it on the screen. Is the way of God is the way of possibility. Now, as we go through this lesson, through this message, through this sermon this morning, I want you to really hold on to this. The way of God is the way of possibility. That's the nature of God. That's the character of God. That's the normative aspect or attribute of how God kind of works and kind of how he rolls. And so as we continue to learn through this journey that the children of Israel are on, there is this crazy story that we come across in the book of Numbers, chapters 16 and 17. And that's what I want to preach to you about here this morning. And if you've never heard this part of the Bible, you're going to be like, oh, wow, I had no idea something like that was in the Bible. Now, here's what I need you to do, okay? Over the next few minutes, I'm asking you to lean in. Like if you're on the couch, lean in a little bit. If you're on some outdoor patio furniture on the back, just lean in, because it's going to take me a few minutes to kind of set up the context of where we're going here this morning. But it's critical that you understand the setting so that you can understand the point of the sermon. So if you're with somebody this morning, if you're holding that cup of coffee, look at them on the couch, look at them in the recliner, wherever they are, look at them and just say, right now, just look at them and say, I'm all ears right now. Go on and look at them, just say, I'm all ears right now, okay? So, as we've learned over the last 5 weeks, Israel is leaving captivity, right? They're leaving slavery, they're leaving Egypt on their way to their destiny, on their way to this place called Canaan. And it was literal for them, but it's symbolic for us. It's a place of richness. It's a place of health. It's a good state of existence. And at this point in the journey, check this out, they had seen God do some absolutely amazing things up to this point. God had literally parted an entire sea so that they could walk across on dry ground, the scripture says. Whenever they got hungry, God caused literal quail to fall down, rain down from the sky and feed them. And whenever they found themselves thirsty, out in the middle of nothing, out in the middle of desert, God brought forth fresh drinking water literally out of a rock. And as they're journeying, as they're traveling on this trek, these nations would come against them and they would fight them and they would battle them. And time after time after time, God allowed them to win the battle against nations that were larger than them, more powerful than them. So the point is, God had continued to show himself faithful. But listen, even though God remained faithful to them, they began to lose their faith in him. So God had remained faithful to Israel. God had remained faithful to them, but they began to lose their faith in him. And so here's this morning's setting in Numbers 13, verses 1 and 2. The Lord said to Moses, "Send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites." Here's the instructions. From each ancestral tribe, send one of its leaders. And so this is the instructions that God is giving them and said, hey, I'm giving you this promised land. I've already promised you that this is going to come to pass. So I want you to send some people out. I want you to kind of check out this place that I'm sending you into. So the first thing, real quick, just setting the context again, God is sending out some people to check on their destiny. God is sending out some people to check on their promise. And notice how the scripture says it, which I am giving you. God has already made this promise, ladies and gentlemen. It wasn't a maybe. It wasn't an if. It wasn't some real estate transaction that was pending on the appraisal to come back all right. It wasn't pending on the seller to agree to some terms. This was a done deal. And so 2 of the 10, they came back and they said, God has been faithful then, and God is going to be faithful now, and let's go. We see ourselves there with God. Let's go and let's just take this land. And 2 of the 12 said, we can't do this. We are scared. We are small. We'll be by ourselves. And so what I want you to realize there is 2 of the 10 were focused on God. And 10 of the 12 were focused on us. They were focused on themselves. And so even though God had continually shown himself faithful, 10 out of the 12 began to lose their faith. Now that would have been bad enough, but the story gets worse. The 10 who lacked faith, for some reason they went back to the camp and they started talking smack. They started bringing everybody down. They started going around the camp and they just said, hey, you probably shouldn't have faith either because this place, we're not ready for it. God's not going to be there. God's not going to show up. They did that because that's what people of little faith do. That's what people, I like to call them little faith people, right? The people who have just a little bit of faith, that's what they do. It's not good enough for them to have a problem with what God is doing. No, you see, they feel like it's their mission to go out and cause problems for everybody else. They started causing problems because they started doubting the process. They started doubting Moses, and they said, hey, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. They literally got to the point, they literally got to the point to where they said, it would be better if we had died in Egypt. I read that and I was like, what? It would be better if you were still in captivity? It would be better if you were still in the sense of slavery, in the sense of bondage? For you and I, it would be like, it would have been better if God would have never saved me. What? On what planet does that make sense? But that's how they began to view things. They were doubting Moses, and if that wasn't bad enough, they began to doubt God. They said, God's never going to bring us into this place. God's never actually going to do this. And if you think that this story is crazy up to this point, it's about to get absolutely bananas, okay? Bananas, right? That's what this story is about to go. Numbers chapter 16, Korah, and it's not on the screen, just listen to me. Korah and Dathan and Abiram, they became insolent, is what the NIV says, and they rose up against Moses, and with them, they stirred up 250 men. So they had a bad attitude, and they went and they got 250 other people, and they said, hey, let's go and let's rise up against Moses. And so as a group, verse 3 and 16 and 3, they came as a group to oppose Moses and Aaron. And then for 20 verses, literally 20 verses, they go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And then verse 23, then the Lord said to Moses, you need to drop them like a bag of dirt. You need to get rid of them. That's the South Louisiana translation. The NIV says, then the Lord said to Moses, say to the assembly, move your tents away from Korah and Dathan and Abiram. These people that are causing problems, you need to go ahead and get away from them. Verse 28, then Moses said, this is how we will know that the Lord has sent me, because they said, Moses, God didn't send you. And so in verse 28, okay, let's find out. And listen to the craziness that's fixing to go down in verse 30. This is what Moses said. Hey, I have an idea. Let's just say, God, whatever you want to do. What if God does something new? And in verse 30, if the Lord brings about something totally new, because that's what God does, is he makes things new. What if the Lord brings about something totally new? Check this out. And the earth opens its mouth and swallows them. Right? It's crazy. It swallows them with everything that belongs to them, and they go down alive into the realm of the dead. Then you will know that these men have treated the Lord with contempt. And listen to verse 31. As soon as the words had finished coming out of his mouth, as soon as he had finished saying all this, the ground underneath them opened up and split apart. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them and their households and everyone and everything associated with Korah and that group of people, together with all of their possessions. Are you kidding me? That really just happened in Numbers chapter 16. People that were causing problems. God opened up the earth and swallowed them. The earth opened up and just had a little snack, right? That's exactly what happened in chapter 16. And then we keep reading in Numbers chapter 17, and it goes like this. Because they were trying to say, who can lead us forward? Who is God's chosen one to lead us forward? We need to see a sign. And so we look at 17:1. Then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Israelites and get the 12 staffs from them, one from each of the leader of each of the ancestral tribes, and write their name on their stick. So it's like a walking stick, right? We go to like REI and we buy a walking stick. Back there, they couldn't just go to Amazon.com and order one, so they had to get like a literal walking stick. It was their staff. It became like associated with them. And God said, every man that leads one of these tribes, write their name on that staff. And then verse 4, place them in the tent of meeting in the front of the Ark of the Covenant where I meet you. And the staff that is belonging to the man that I choose will sprout. This dead stick is going to grow leaves. That's how you're going to realize who I'm using. This is what the Lord is saying. That's how you're going to understand which one my hand is upon to lead the children of Israel into their destiny. And then look at Numbers 17:8. The next day, Moses entered the tent and saw that Aaron's staff, which represented the tribe of Levi, had not only sprouted, but it had budded, blossomed, and produced almonds. What? This walking stick, overnight, sprouted leaves, sprouted almonds. And that's how they knew that God was in this movement. That's how they knew that God's plan was going forth. As crazy as that story sounds, I believe that there's two very powerful truths for us to be realizing this morning and applying to our lives this morning. The first thing, it's important that you note that the dead piece of wood that sprouted these leaves and yielded a harvest did not belong to those who had lost their faith in God. The one that stayed faithful is the one that became fruitful. In other words, you'll see it like this. Seasons of faithfulness produce seasons of fruitfulness. Guys, that's good. That's the nature of God. That's how he is. That's how he operates. Seasons of faithfulness produce seasons of fruitfulness. Israel had been wandering through the desert for some time now, and it wasn't perfect. They had been hungry, they'd been thirsty, they'd been in battles. But whenever some people chose to slip into a state of faithlessness, some people said, no, we're going to lean into faithfulness. And the nature of God rewards the faithfulness of man. The nature of God rewards the faithfulness of a woman, of anyone in humanity. And it's not earning something from God. It's realizing where God is trying to take you. It's that higher ground that he's inviting you to just move into an experience. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the old school fable of the turtle and the hare. I know you've heard that like a gazillion times. We've all heard it a gazillion times. But the hare was fast, but the turtle was faithful. And listen, faithful always defeats fast. Faithful always defeats fast. I don't know if you are a gardener. I'm not a gardener, but I have an uncle. He's passed away now, but he was good old Uncle Harvey. Everybody should have an Uncle Harvey. I've got this guy, Uncle Harvey was his name, and he lived in Nebo, Louisiana. And shout out to you if you know where Nebo is. It's a suburb of Gina, right? Gina's about like that big, so Nebo is even, anyway. It's a tiny little place, and I would spend some weeks during the summer there with Uncle Harvey and Aunt Johnny Lee. And man, it was good times. And Uncle Harvey was a gardener, and he always planted a garden. Now, here's the thing. Whenever I would go and I would spend time with Uncle Harvey, he would get this riding lawnmower that he bought from Sears and Roebuck, old school references, I know. He had a homemade trailer, and he would pull this trailer out into the woods next to Hemp's Creek. And he would just plant this garden, man. And I didn't want to plant the garden. I wanted to go play in the creek. I was either playing in the creek or I was fishing for brim. That's what I wanted to do. But you know what? He was faithful. And whenever the sun was shining, he was planting. And whenever it was cloudy, he was planting. And if the time seemed right, he planted. If the time seemed wrong, he planted. If the forecast was good, he planted. If the forecast was bad, he planted. He was faithful in his planting. And every year, he always got a harvest. Every year, the crops would always come forth. And see, if he would have went fishing with me, if he would have went playing in Hemp's Creek with me, then he wouldn't have got the harvest. And some of you need to hear that right now this morning. Some of you are like the children of Israel, and you feel like that you've been walking through your own version of the desert for so long, and you don't see any harvest. You don't see any sprigs coming out of the ground. You don't see any fruit yet. But I want to just tell you this morning, just remain faithful, because seasons of faithfulness will always produce seasons of fruitfulness. You feel like you've been planting, you feel like you've been working, you feel like you've been sowing, you feel like you've been toiling, you feel like you've been doing everything that you know to do. You've been in this word, and it's just not showing you the things that you thought that you would see up to this point in your life. But I just want to tell you, man, get your head up this morning and realize that seasons of faithfulness produce seasons of fruitfulness. And guys, realize how this applies to all parts of your life. Some of you need to be faithful in your marriage. And I'm not talking about like not cheating on your spouse. I mean, yeah, you should not do that. I mean, that's a pretty good idea. But I'm talking about just remaining faithful. Showing up every day in your marriage, being kind every day in your marriage. Just stay the course. Raising your children. Some days you love them, some days you know what I mean, right? Stay faithful. Stay faithful, because seasons of faithfulness produce seasons of fruitfulness, and most of all spiritual. Some of you are like, man, I've been trying, and I don't see any results yet. Stay the course. Stay the course. Stay the course. Because spirituality is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and God is with you, God is faithful, God is for you. And so seasons of faithfulness produce seasons of fruitfulness. And number two, God's most basic nature is possibility. If I could take all of the attributes and characteristics of God and can boil them down to one word, I think that one word might be possibility. Because it points back to the story so incredibly well. These sticks, basically that's what they were, these dead sticks in Numbers 17. They were dead, they were dry, they were old walking sticks. They had no life in them, they had no hope in them. But where man saw death, God saw life. That's what God does. That's just in his nature. So these almond branches, right? Even to this day, the nation of Israel uses an almond branch as a sign of life. They'll use it in their literature. They'll use it in their art. And it's a sign of restoration. Come on, guys. This is so good. It's God's word. It's a sign of regeneration. It's a sign that God can take something that seems to be beyond repair and he can make it brand new. This was the sign of God's character. This was the sign of his nature. Because God takes something that seems to be where there is no hope, and he brings hope. He takes something that seems to be dead, and he will bring life. And this is probably going to be a little bit of an emotional story for a couple of you. Stay with me as I kind of walk through this. But my mom is not the healthiest person in the world. She's in a nursing home up around central Louisiana. But about 5 years ago, one of the darkest nights of our family's existence happened whenever we were at Rapides General Hospital, and my dad and my brother and myself got called in by the doctor, and they gave us that piece of paper called the DNR, and we had to sign that. And the doctor looked at us and said, she's probably not going to live through the night. She's probably not going to recover. She's probably not going to make it. The doctor literally said, I will even go out on a limb and say it's impossible that she's going to recover, so you need to get your family business in order. You need to call everybody in together. Guys, that was 5 years ago, and she's not perfect, but she's alive. She's wheeling around Lexington House this morning like a boss. Come on, you know what I mean, right? But that's the point, is where the doctor saw death, God saw life. And where the doctor spoke impossibility, God spoke possibility. If I laid 12 sticks on the ground before you this morning and then said, hey, which one of these walking sticks are gonna sprout? You'd say probably none of them, right? What's the possibility that any of them are going to produce almonds overnight? None of you would say, yeah, that's a pretty good, I like that. I'll take that bet, right? Where there seems to be impossibility, God brings possibility. And where there seems to be only dead sticks, God brings life. That's his nature. That's what we're talking about today. That's what God does. Not only can God take an impossible situation and make it possible, you know what? But he can take an impossible person and speak possibility into their life. And that might be exactly where you are here this morning. And I want to tell you, that's what God does. And I've got to hurry, but I want to give you a couple of examples. I can give you tons of Acacia examples of stories of people that go to Acacia, that call Acacia home, that fit this description. But I'm just going to give you three real quick to try to give you some general places of application to where you can take this message this morning and apply it to your own life. The first thing is marriage. I'm speaking about a marriage this morning that they thought that it was over. In fact, it was over. Their names, I got permission. Their names are Ben and Jamie Lowry. Their marriage was over. Like it had been to the courthouse. It was signed, sealed, and delivered. They were done. They were apart. But God said, no, I'm not finished with you guys. And so God begins to work on them. God begins to work on their hearts, and God begins to reconcile them. And today, Ben and Jamie Lowry are our campus directors of Old Hammond Campus. They're together with their three incredible children because that marriage, everybody looked at it and said, it's over. The judge looked at it and said, it's done. The decree is written. It's over. It's finished. But that's not in God's nature. God's nature is to take something that seems lifeless and to breathe life into it. And if your marriage is in that place this morning, don't give up hope, because you may see death. You may see no hope, but God sees hope and God sees life. God sees possibility. That's what God does. That's his nature. And then also, not just in your relationship with your spouse, but maybe your relationship with your parent, okay? About to get real here. And I'm not going to name this name because I reached out to them, but I didn't get permission to use their name, and so I'm not going to use their name. But there's a person that goes to Acacia. She calls Acacia home, and not long ago she got married. And her relationship with her mother was in such a disarray that the mother called her and said, I'm not coming to your wedding. Their relationship was so broken, it was so dead, it was so destroyed that the mother looked at the daughter and said, I'm not coming. I don't support this. I'm not coming to your wedding. And so I had the opportunity, the incredible privilege of tying the vows, of saying the vows, of tying the knot, helping them that night. And I saw the look in her eyes, and I know that she missed mom, but the relationship was dead. But not too long ago at an event, I saw this person, this unnamed Acacian, and her mom. And this unnamed Acacian introduced me to her mom, and she said, this is my mom. And the relationship it's not perfect, but it's growing. It's reconciling. It's coming back together. They thought that it was over. but God speaks in possibility. That's God's nature. That's God's nature. And then maybe some of you feel like you've got some sort of a calling on your life to do something. And I'm not saying that you're going to pastor a church. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. I don't know. But maybe there's a calling on your life, and you know that you should be living your life on some level of purpose that's higher than what you're currently living. And you feel this tug in your heart that I should be doing something for the kingdom of God. And God is urging me to get involved. Maybe it's to serve. Maybe it's to do something. Maybe it's in some capacity like that. But you know that you're not supposed to be living your life on the current level of mediocrity that you're currently living, and God is just bringing you into something more. There's a calling on your life, but you know, wait a minute, what about me, my story? I'm a mess. I've got this package that's just broken. I've got this story that's just dismantled. I've got this past that is just horrible, right? Well, her name is Christy Nicholas. And Christy Nicholas goes to Acacia. She calls Acacia home. And there was a time in her life where her life was so broken. It was so battered. Addiction had just come in and absolutely gripped her heart. It was tearing her home apart. It was tearing her family apart. And she reached out and she got some help, and she found Acacia by way of Mission Heart. And now this morning, Wayne and Christy are sitting in their living room with their boys, and they're watching. They're worshiping with us this morning. And probably, if I know Christy by this time, she's probably wiping a tear, and so is Wayne. And because they're looking at this, because they saw what everybody else saw, and everybody had given up on Christy. The law, the charges were filed, everything, this is a dead situation. But where people saw death, God saw life. And God knew that her story was not over, but her story was just really actually beginning. A brand new beginning was about to come into existence. And so listen to me, somebody. You need to hear me this morning. You need to hear this preacher this morning. You may feel like Israel wandering through the desert. You may feel like you're at a place where, like, how long is this going to last? You're looking at lifelessness. You're looking at hopelessness. You're looking at, there's no way that this can work out. There's no way that this can get better. But I want to tell you, as long as you are not dead, God is not done. Somebody needs to hear that this morning. God's not finished with you just yet. So in closing, let me remind you, Israel's story that we've been learning now can be your story. That's the reason that we're looking at this. We're not looking at this to learn some history. We're looking at this to learn some application. Maybe you're at a place where you feel like you're wandering through this desert of questions, and there's no hope, there's no chance, there's no possibility, there is no light. I want to tell you, you're in a good spot, because that's exactly where God does his finest work. When you've done all that you can, you've tried all that you can, you've done everything, but everywhere you look, it's just dead. Everywhere you look, it's hopeless. Everywhere you look, it's impossible. But God's most basic nature is possibility. And perhaps the best thing that I could tell you all day here, the best example that I could give you of possibility, is a God-man by the name of Jesus Christ. Because he can come into your world and he can change everything. Romans chapter 8, verse 11. If the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ Jesus from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies through his spirit who dwells in you. Is this talking about eternity? Yes. Is this talking about right now? Yes. God wants to breathe life into your existence. He wants to speak possibility into your impossibility. He wants to change you. That's what he does. That's his nature. And I love John 14 and 19. Jesus is speaking. It's so short, it's so simple, it's so profound. Jesus said, because I live, you can too. That's what Jesus said. Because I live, you shall live also. And so if you're in that place that feels impossible, it's fertile ground for a miracle, man. If you're in that place where you don't know how this is going to work out, you're in a good spot this morning. Because God's ready to move. Because God can take some walking sticks. Listen, God can take some walking sticks from ancient Israel and he can make one overnight grow leaves and produce almonds, produce fruit. You just can't stop having faith in God. Because if you'll continue in your faithfulness, he's going to lead you to that land called fruitfulness. And he is going to bring possibility where there seems to be impossibility.